The transport shuddered as it sliced through Zorvilvanaz 3's sulfurous clouds, its metal frame protesting against the crushing pressure. Ray peered through the reinforced viewport, barely discerning the brutal landscape below. Obsidian spikes clawing at the swirling mists like the fangs of a slumbering titan. Above, the sky churned in a tempest of violet and gold, punctuated by silent flashes of static lightning. This wasn't just a planet. It pulsed with a savage life of its own. Rai's hand remained steady on her lap as the shuttle descended, betraying no fear. She'd absorbed every report, etched every scan into her mind, endured countless simulations mirroring this alien hell. But nothing could truly prepare her. The cadets, a tapestry of 23 species, had clawed their way into the Galactic Academy through raw endurance, sharp intellect, and unwavering leadership potential. Most dwarfed Rai in size, armored in scales or cloaked in thick fur, yet a shared silence gripped them, even the boastful Rivian twins. The mission echoed in her mind. Survive 72 hours. No contact, no aid, only your instincts. It was a crucible, stripping away civilization to expose what truly remained. A final hiss of steam and protesting metal heralded the shuttle's landing, the ramp grinding open to reveal a forest of spiraling trees, their trunks softly glowing with inner light. The air shimmered, thick with moisture and an alien, chemical tang. Ray emerged forth, the others hesitant, their senses straining to analyze the unknown. An insectoid cadet clicked its mandibles, its multifaceted eyes darting. A furry being dug its claws into the soil. Ray knelt, pressing her palm against the ground. Warm, vibrating. She held her tongue. The instructors remained on board, observing. The cadets were alone now. The planet's AI passively recorded their every move for later dissection. Rescue would come only if a biosignal flatlined. And even then, it might be too late. Ray's heart beat calmly. She had grown up among the mountains of Earth, scaling peaks before she could read. Her father had taught her to find shelter in a rock's shadow. Her mother, a planetary ranger, had taught her to track with a blade of grass. Zorvilvanaz 3 didn't frighten her. Not yet. The group splintered into 5 teams. Ray found herself with Grolin, a translucent aquatic encased in a life support suit. Drennick, a feathered male from a high-gravity world. And Miss, a pale green symbiotic with telepathic pollination abilities. Strangers. They knew nothing of what she could do. That suited her just fine. Grolin, struggling with the humidity, took point. "Eastward," he gurgled in intercom. "Higher ground, less fog." Ray nodded, wordlessly falling into step. Observation first. The terrain morphed rapidly. Soft, fungal earth gave way to brittle clay that crunched beneath their boots. Crystalline insects whirred past, their songs unnervingly harmonic. Ray paused, brushing her hand against a spiraling tree. It recoiled slightly. Alive. Reactive. She made a note. Every detail counted. Zorvanaz 3, a world where even tiny mistakes invited oblivion. As the day waned, they arrived at a precipice. The dim star, a pale imitation of a sun, lingered. A fiery sunset bled across the alien horizon, casting the jagged landscape in a false, alluring glow. "We should camp there for the view," Miss exclaimed. Drennick countered, voice tight with apprehension. "Too exposed. Predators would spot us instantly." Ray's voice, a low, steady rumble, sliced through the tension. 200 meters south, a rocky alcove offers thermal cover. Marked it 20 minutes ago. Heads snapped in her direction, astonishment etched on their faces. She hadn't uttered a word since their landing. Miss tilted her head, intrigued. "You memorized the terrain while moving?" Ray simply pivoted and started walking, her silhouette framed against the fading light. "Follow me if you want a safe place to sleep." Inside the alcove, the cadets began gathering their meager supplies. Grolin, with trembling hands, activated his suit's moisture condenser, carefully filling a single flask. Ray, with practiced movements, constructed a rudimentary fire pit using sulfur-resistant leaves and a sparkstone she had secretly kept from Earth. As the flames danced, a fragile calm began to settle over the group. Miss levitated a handful of luminescent seeds around the perimeter, their soft glow a feeble attempt to ward off unseen insects. Drennick frantically sharpened bone shards into makeshift spears, his face pale and drawn. Ray leaned against the cool rock wall, her eyes constantly scanning the encroaching darkness of the forest. Then, the sounds shifted, a subtle but terrifying change. The comforting hum of insects faded into silence. The pulsating light of the trees flickered and dimmed. Something was different. Imperceptible at first, then undeniable. The forest held its breath. Ray, wordless, pushed herself to her feet, her eyes narrowed with a primal focus. She moved to the alcove's edge, knelt, and pressed her palm against the alien earth. The ground vibrated again, not from ambient energy, but from a heavy, rhythmic movement, too slow for natural weather, too gentle for tectonic shifts. Ray had felt this once before, on Earth's frozen tundra, the approach of a snow bear in its glacial winter crawl. But this was bigger, far bigger. She turned back to her group, her voice barely a whisper. "Something's coming." Drennick raised a skeptical eyebrow, his bravado masking his fear. "You felt that through your skin?" Grolin clicked his mandibles uncertainly. "Nothing on visual scan." Miss gazed into the distance, her plant-bonded senses overwhelmed by confusion. "It's large," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "It's wrong." Ray drew a deep, steadying breath. "We don't run. Not until we know what we're facing." The others hesitated, their training battling the raw fear that threatened to consume them. But they obeyed. As the last sliver of the swollen sun disappeared below the horizon, a colossal shape shifted amongst the trees. A tree trunk. No, a limb moved, revealing an eye the size of a plate, glowing with a soft, mesmerizing amber light. The beast stepped forward, each footfall silent but purposeful. 8-legged, powerfully built, with a hide that resembled polished stone. Its tusks curved backward, shimmering with crystalline edges. It emitted no sound. It didn't need to. Its presence spoke volumes. The young cadet stood frozen, and Ray, closest to the edge of the alcove, did not blink. She knew this was only the beginning. The beast stood motionless, framed between the gnarled trunks at the forest's edge. Its hide reflected the faint firelight, appearing almost metallic beneath its stone-like texture. For a heartbeat, the clearing seemed to compress in on itself, every noise, every breath stolen from the air. The ambient glow from the surrounding trees faded further, as if nature itself feared the creature that had entered its domain. Ray didn't move. Her pupils adjusted quickly, tracking the beast's anatomy. Elongated limbs, low center of gravity, 4 supporting legs with 2 longer frontal appendages, likely for grabbing or striking. Its head sat unusually low compared to its shoulders, suggesting ambush behavior, predatory, calculated. The amber eye on the right side of its face blinked sideways slowly. It had seen her, she knew that, and had already decided that she was prey. Behind her, Grolin's breath hissed through his exosuit valves. The aquatic cadet's gills pulsed erratically, signaling panic. Miss crouched lower, vines on her back involuntarily extending and then retreating. Drennick, who had shown so much confidence earlier, stood like a petrified statue, clutching a half-sharpened spear with his knuckles whitening around it. Ray's hearing sharpened, every nerve on high alert. The chilling rasp of Drennick's razor-sharp claws against the metal shaft echoed in her ears. A pungent, sickeningly sweet odor assaulted her nostrils. Grolin's rehydration fluid, oozing from the compromised seams of his protective suit, filling her with dread. She could hear the monster inhaling deeply, a slow, controlled breath of a hunter on the prowl. To run would be fatal. Her instinct screamed it. Millennia of human evolution alongside predators, those apex hunters wired for movement, surged within her. Flight would trigger its attack. That thing, whatever nightmare birthed it, would overtake them with ease, especially on this terrain, especially in the blackness of night. The creature's massive head cocked slightly, and it lumbered one step closer. The earth vibrated under Ray's boots, a tremor that resonated in her bones. Her muscles coiled, fighting the overwhelming urge to recoil. Slowly, deliberately, she raised a hand behind her, palm down, a silent command for the others to hold. But no one reacted, not out of defiance but paralysis. Their bodies had shut down, betraying them. A chilling realization washed over Rye. She was utterly alone. Any action, any survival, rested solely on her. Her voice, though soft, cut through the tension with unwavering resolve. Nobody moves. She didn't need to shout. True authority wasn't born of volume, but unwavering conviction. Ray's eyes remained locked on the beasts. She felt its intelligence, not the kind that solved equations, but something ancient, primal. It was assessing her, measuring not curiosity, but for the precise moment to strike. The creature shifted, its massive shoulders lowering, claws extending, widening its stance. It was priming itself to pounce. Ray refused to wait. She couldn't afford to. With a surge of adrenaline, she took a defiant step forward. Not bravery, but pure survival fueled her. In that instant, she grasped what the alien cadets couldn't. This wasn't a contest of brute force, but of presence, of psychological dominance. The only deterrent to a predator's attack was the implied threat of unbearable danger, of certain death. She had to embody that threat. Slowly, deliberately, she spread her arms wide, amplifying her silhouette, making her appear impossibly larger, disrupting the natural flow of the environment. Predators, Rye knew, abhorred unnatural symmetry. She had to transform herself into an anomaly. Her breath deepened, a controlled rhythm. She exhaled forcefully through her mouth, baring her teeth, not in terror, but in fierce defiance. The creature's paws shifted from side to side, its breathing quickening, agitated. Confusion flickered in its eyes. Behind her, Grolan mumbled something in his strange native tongue, but Rye ignored it. She focused on her breath. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, pulse steady, legs rooted to the ground. Then she did something that startled even herself. A low growl erupted from the depths of her chest. A primal sound unearthed from a time when humans hunted with sharpened sticks and fire, resonating through ancient caves and forests. The effect was immediate. The creature's swaying ceased. Its ears, if they could be called that, twitched, its head tilting slightly, thrown off balance. Ray took another measured step forward, the crunch of earth under her foot deliberate, defiant. She widened her stance and growled again, louder, more guttural, the sound stretching longer, a warning rather than a mere suggestion. Predators, despite their strength, respected territorial boundaries. The strong held their ground, the weak retreated. Rye was holding her ground. A gust of hot wind swept through the clearing, carrying the stench of sulfur and disturbing pollen from the trembling trees. The beast snorted, raising its forelimbs higher, exposing its vulnerable underbelly for the first time. It wasn't an act of dominance, but of uncertainty, of desperate calculation. Ray saw it. Hesitation, doubt. That was the crack she needed, the opening she had to exploit. She planted her heel firmly in the dirt and unleashed a bellowing roar. The sound reverberated off the rock walls, rippled through the canopy, and startled even the low burn of the fire into a flickering frenzy. Her voice cracked midway through, not from weakness, but from the sheer raw power of the sound. She poured every ounce of her being into that roar. She became the roar. Rai was gone, replaced by a force, a shape, a presence. Human, yes, but primal, untamed. The creature froze, suspended in time. For a long, breathless moment, nothing moved. Slowly, with a heavy heart, it lowered its magnificent, tusked head. The ancient amber eye blinked, once, then again, a silent acknowledgement. It shifted a massive foot back, then another, retreat etched in every movement. Finally, deliberately, with no sudden haste, it turned and it vanished back into the woods from whence it came, leaving a void that snapped shut with returning air. Ray didn't crumple. She didn't even sigh. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered her arms and faced the others. Grolin knelt, his exosuit wheezing, a broken sound. Miss, tears like liquid glass streaking her face. Her vines hung limp and lifeless. Drennick remained frozen, jaw slack, eyes wide with lingering horror. The silence was absolute, but Ray didn't need words. She simply walked back to the fire, sank onto the nearest stone, and finally allowed her shoulders to slump. Only when the fire sparked anew did someone dare break the stillness. "You should be dead," Grolin rasped, as if a shout might call the beast back. Ray's gaze lifted, weariness now etched deep in her eyes. "It wasn't after food," she said quietly. "It was testing our fear." Drennick found the strength to sit, visibly trembling. "How did you know what to do?" Ray shrugged. "Winning isn't always about fighting. Sometimes you just convince the other side the price is too steep." The silence returned, but now it held respect, not terror. They looked at her anew, not just as the human cadet, not just as the one with Earth instincts, but as the one who had faced oblivion and stood firm. Outside the hollow, the forest dared to breathe once more. The trees vibrated, insects resumed their drone, but the melody had shifted, subtly yet profoundly. Ray felt it in her very bones. The predator had retreated, but it hadn't forgotten, and neither had she. Dawn on Zorvanis 3 wasn't a gentle unveiling, but a violent tear in the sky. Violet light burned through the splitting clouds, illuminating the alien canopy from below, painting long, shimmering shadows that seemed almost alive. Ray sat at the edge of the rocky hollow, legs crossed, hands resting on her knees. She hadn't slept. Her eyes remained fixed on the path where the beast had vanished hours ago. The others had succumbed to restless slumber, but she couldn't afford such luxury. Instinct still thrummed within her, a primal warning. What had withdrawn might return, not from hunger, but from wounded pride. She had challenged it, and such challenges rarely ended in a single encounter. Behind her, Grolin stirred first. The hiss of his exosuit valve echoed faintly, followed by a wet cough. Ray didn't turn. She merely listened. The aquatic cadet's movements were sluggish, likely drained by his earlier panic. Next came Miss, soft shifting as she adjusted her position, her vines rustling like withered grass. Drennick remained silent. She suspected he was awake, but unwilling to break the stillness. As the sun climbed higher, casting fractured beams across the clearing, Ray rose. "We move at first light," she announced, without turning. Grolin's voice was strained. "We're not going to talk about what happened?" "We survived," she replied. "Talking won't make us any safer. Moving might." Drennick stood, his feathers bristling. "You want to leave the hollow after what we saw?" Ray turned, her expression unreadable. "We weren't sent here to find comfortable hiding places. This is a trial, and no one succeeds by standing still." He opened his mouth to argue, but thought better of it. She had already proven herself. The dynamic had shifted. She wasn't just the human cadet anymore. She had become something else in their eyes, a fulcrum, a mystery. Ray didn't seek the burden of leadership, but she knew from history that it was often forced upon those who resisted it most. By mid-morning, the group had descended from the ridge, venturing deeper into unexplored terrain. The forest had changed again. The trees grew denser, lower to the ground, with bark like cooled glass and roots that pulsed faintly beneath the soil. Ray's boots crunched over leaves that flashed silver before crumbling like ash. The wind carried strange scents, fermented fruit, ozone, and something else. Something metallic. Miss paused by one of the trees, her fingertips tracing the edge of a purple blossom. This isn't normal flora. It's reacting to us. Ray moved closer. Reactive pollination. The green-skinned cadet nodded slowly. Possibly, but A prickling sensation, as if she were being watched, made Ray's senses sharpen. It feels like communication, she murmured, her voice tight. Her eyes narrowed. We touch nothing more than absolutely necessary. Groen, his composure cracking, visibly sweated under his suit. The air had grown thick and stifling. Ray caught his hesitation, his parched throat. Hydration, she stated, tossing him her flask. He fumbled to catch it, surprised by the gesture, and drank deeply. Ray pushed onward, every fiber of her being acutely aware of her surroundings. She scanned for any disturbance in nature, animal tracks, broken branches, droppings, anything to betray the beast's return. But an unsettling quiet blanketed everything, charged with an almost unbearable tension. Around midday, they broke into a small clearing, a shallow stream winding through it. The water had a strange, oily sheen, almost luminous. Ray knelt, dipping a stick into the liquid. It clung to the wood, like glowing syrup. Not toxic, but reactive, she observed, distrust coloring her voice. The area provided good visibility and natural cover from rocky ridges, a decent place to rest. She signaled the others. 1 hour, silence, no fire. They moved with quiet efficiency. Miss settled on a flat rock, vines receding into her skin as she retreated into herself, searching. Drennick perched on a high ledge nearby, his lean muscles taut, eyes scanning the tree line. Grolan removed his helmet, gulping the humid air that met his gills with a shaky breath. Ray sat with her back to a thick tree, eyes closed, but her mind raced, wrestling with possibilities. What trial waited next? When would they face something even more terrifying than the beast? A shift in the sound of the forest snapped her alert, faint as footsteps on moss. Her eyes shot open. Drennick stood simultaneously, his nostrils flared. Something's coming, he hissed. Grolan scrambled with his helmet. Miss Rose's vines flickered. Rye, still as stone, let her hand slide to a sharpened stick beside her, not as a weapon, but to feel the earth's vibrations. This time, the sound was distinct, four-legged, medium weight, but erratic. Not the same, Ray breathed. A creature emerged cautiously from the trees. It was smaller, a quadruped, but undeniably different. Its skin was translucent. The muscles beneath pulsed with a strange internal light. Its head was narrow, a forked tongue flicking. Rye raised her hand in a signal. No one moved. The animal sniffed the air, paused by the stream. It drank deeply, then raised its head, its gaze settling on the group. Not predatory, almost curious. Ray stood slowly, deliberately, letting it see her. The creature tilted its head, then let out a high-pitched trill before melting back into the undergrowth. Grolan exhaled raggedly. What was that? A scout, Ray replied, her voice steady. Drennick looked down at her. A scout for what? She met his gaze directly. For whatever lives near here, which means we are not alone. The remaining hour passed in silence. The forest's hum had changed again, less oppressive, but alive with a new, unsettling activity, the feeling of being watched. Ray made the decision to move before sunset, leading the group south toward a dense patch of rocky terrain. The climb was arduous, but the high vantage point offered strategic advantage. Reaching the summit, they found something unexpected, chilling. A massive circular depression in the earth, perhaps 50 meters across, where the trees had been uprooted with brutal force. In the center rose a mound of bones, hundreds, perhaps thousands. Some bleached smooth, others shattered. A kill zone. Groland's breath hitched. This is where it eats. Ray scanned the perimeter of the crater. Or where it displays. Miss shuddered. Displays to what? To us, Ray answered, her voice echoing in the unnatural silence. To anything that watches. This is territorial. It's not just a predator. It's intelligent. She stepped closer, studying the chaotic arrangement of the bones. They weren't randomly scattered. They were deliberately placed, arranged in lines, arcs, like a message. Rai crouched beside a long femur, etched with shallow grooves. Language, she whispered. Drennick paced restlessly. We need to leave this place. Now. Ray stood, brushing dirt from her palms. No, we need to understand what it wants. Groland groaned. You want to stay near the den of an apex hunter? No, she said calmly. I wanted to know. I'm not afraid of it. The cadets stared at her, a mixture of fear and disbelief in their eyes. They were stunned beyond belief, but nobody dared speak out. Not after the horrors of the previous night. Ray advanced to the precipice of the burial mound, carefully selecting a few bones and arranging them with deliberate purpose. 3 lines converged at a single point, a symbol of humanity, directional and intensely meaningful. She was compelled to wait, not by choice, but because she had exhausted all other options. The mound held its breath. The bones lay inert beneath the unforgiving sun. An unnerving stillness gripped the clearing, like the moment before a scream shatters the silence. Ray stood just beyond the symbol she had painstakingly created. 3 intersecting lines that were meaningless to her companions, yet profoundly significant to her. It was a uniquely human inscription, echoing ancient warnings etched into caves and battlefield shards. It wasn't an order to attack or retreat. It was a declaration. Watched. A mirror held up to a predator, expecting only silence and obedience. Behind her, Groland shifted uncomfortably, his weight distributed unevenly. The oppressive heat bore down on his exosuit, thick and relentless. Miss huddled nearby, her vines pressed tightly to her spine, her gaze darting nervously from shadow to shadow. Drennick clung to a rock formation overlooking the hollow, his posture rigid, claws digging deep into the stone. None of them grasped the meaning of Ray's actions, yet none dared to intervene. Minutes bled into an agonizing hour. Ray remained unblinking, her gaze sweeping the tree line, searching for the slightest flicker, movement, or unnatural stillness. Then, from the distant brush, a rhythm began. Not a sound, but a visceral feeling. The same tremor in the earth, deep, heavy, measured. Ray stepped forward with deliberate force, planting her heel firmly. Her message was unambiguous. She had not come to flee. The trees parted. It emerged slowly, its sheer size magnified by the daylight. Muscles coiled beneath the obsidian-gray hide, ribs flexing with each agonizing breath. The tusks shimmered in the sun, refracting light like a prism. Amber eyes locked onto Ray, then drifted down to the symbol she had crafted. She stood her ground. The beast didn't lunge. It didn't snarl. Instead, it approached the circle of bones with deliberate grace, pausing at the edge of her marking. Its head tilted, eyes narrowed slightly, and then, with earth-shattering grace, it lowered itself, its front limbs bending until its massive shoulders touched the earth. A choked gasp escaped Grolin behind her. Miss let out a soft, disbelieving whimper. Drennick remained frozen, his body caught between flight and defense. But Ray didn't flinch. She understood now. This wasn't surrender. It was recognition. She took 2 steps forward, closing the distance between herself and the beast. Its breathing remained steady. It neither recoiled nor advanced. Ray looked directly into its eye. The reflection showed her not just her face, but her form. Small, fragile, utterly breakable. And yet, it bowed. She extended her arm, not towards its head, but out to the side, slowly, showing no threat. The creature watched, and then, astonishingly, it mirrored her. Its front limb moved, muscles rippling, as it pressed a single claw against the soil to match her gesture. The others behind her remained silent. For a heartbeat, the entire world seemed to pause. Ray crouched low, selecting a bone from the edge of the pile, an unbroken femur. She placed it gently atop her symbol, intersecting the lines diagonally. Then she rose and walked backward without turning her back. The beast didn't follow. It lowered its head once more, then stood, completely still. Ray rejoined the group. Drennick slid down from his perch, his feathers flattened with disbelief. "What did you do?" "I responded," she said. Grolin's exosuit hissed again. "To what? To a language we weren't meant to understand? Territory challenge? Observation? I think it expected fear. I gave it something else." Miss spoke next, her voice trembling. "It bowed to you." Ray shook her head. "It acknowledged me. That's not the same thing." The sun had begun its slow descent. Shadows lengthened, stretching like fingers across the rocks. The forest remained quiet, not with fear, but with attention. Ray felt it in her spine, in the air around them. Something had shifted. This trial, this test. This was no mere act of survival anymore. It was a communion, not with nature, but with an entity that had mastered existence here eons before humanity's arrival. Silently, the group navigated the rugged path, drawn toward the dense thicket Ray had identified. Trees huddled together, forming a canopy that cast the filtered sunlight into shades of gold. The air carried hints of cinnamon and damp moss, a strangely beautiful atmosphere, like a cathedral fashioned by forces beyond human comprehension. Grolin's voice cut through the silence. "What if it returns?" Rye's gaze lifted to the branches above. "It will." Drennick's body tensed. "And if it doesn't yield next time?" Ray managed a subtle smile. "Then we yield, or we fight. Either way, we've already proven something." Miss observed her with an unreadable expression, a blend of admiration and wonder. "What have we proven?" Ray answered, "That we aren't merely here to survive. We are here to be seen." The group established camp within the thicket's heart. No fire this time. No overt signals. Only quiet survival. Ray leaned against gnarled root structures, tracing her thumb over a smooth stone. Her thoughts drifted back to Earth, the rigorous forest trials her mother had led her through, the moment she faced a grizzly bear and refused to yield. That instinct never waned. It had simply transformed, evolved. As night crept in, the others gradually succumbed to sleep. Drennick coiled tightly beneath a broad leaf. Miss floated from a low branch, her form emitting a soft bioluminescence. Grolin remained near the stream, submerged waist-deep in a shallow pool, his breathing steady now that the night air cooled. Rye stood guard. The stars of Zorvana's 3 suns emerged in unfamiliar clusters, constellations flickering through the treetops. She counted 37 visible stars from her vantage point. Each one a sun, each sun a system, each system a place where something might be observing. There was no sound, yet she felt the presence again, not from the forest, not from the ground, but from the challenge itself. The rules had shifted. Tomorrow, she sensed, the beast would test her again, but not with brute force, with understanding. And she would be ready. The night passed uneventfully, yet tension remained. Ray remained half awake, even as her body screamed for rest. The breeze that snaked among the roots and leaves felt colder than the night before, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. Not fear, but anticipation. Like the forest itself, it was awaiting the next move in a game it hadn't initiated, but could no longer ignore. Dawn arrived quietly, not with a burst of light, but with a subtle thinning of shadows. Ray rose before the others, her movements precise. She checked the perimeter, not for immediate threats, but for subtle signs. Scratches on bark, rearranged stones, altered scents in the air. The beast had not returned. That single fact spoke volumes. It was giving her space, waiting to see her next move. Grolan stirred first. His face, behind the translucent shield, looked different, less anxious, more calculating. When he stood, he didn't ask about the plan. He nodded toward the ridge, acknowledging her authority without question. Miss awoke suspended in the vines, eyes blinking slowly, sensing something intangible in the air. She remained silent, yet visibly alert. Drennick said nothing. He simply rose, collected his spear, and fell into step beside Ray as she led the group toward the ridge above the thicket. From the summit, they could see the crater's edge once more, where the bone mound stood like a fossilized monument. But Rai didn't lead them back there. She turned southeast, where the trees gave way to a valley dotted with stone columns and plateaus. She had mentally mapped this area 2 days earlier. Something about its unnatural symmetry had captured her attention. Certainty bloomed within her. The land revealed geometric patterns, far from natural erosion, shaped by intent. Stones arranged in deliberate concentric circles, not remnants of buildings but spatial markers. A communication formed not by human hands, but by a being that comprehended geometry as language. She entered the first circle, mistrailed hesitantly, vine-like fingers brushing the stone's surface as if seeking consent. Grolan circled the edge, eyes fixed on etchings so subtle, light needed to strike them at a precise angle to see them. Ray knelt, tracing a spiral, not continuous, interrupted by breaks that formed dots. A language of rhythm and space, unspoken, not written in symbols, but woven into the landscape. She extended her palm, hovering above, not directly touching. "What does it mean?" Miss murmured. Ray, eyes still downcast, answered, "It's a question." Grolan looked up sharply. "A question?" Ray nodded, waiting to see if we comprehend it. "The entire valley is." Drennick sighed, crossing his arms. "Then answer it." Ray rose deliberately. "We already did. By not fleeing, not fighting, by choosing to observe. This isn't a battlefield. It's a mirror." Silence enveloped the group. The wind whispered through the columns. Abruptly, the tremor returned, not from beneath, but from above. A rumble, easily mistaken for distant thunder, yet patterned, rising and falling like breath. Ray gazed upward. Treetops bent backward, as if bowing. Then it emerged, not from the trees this time, but from the valley entrance. It moved with impossible grace, with purpose. Its path was no accident. It followed the spiral. Each stride aligned with the intervals carved into the stones. Ray mirrored the spiral, matching the beast's movements from the other side. Step for step, Creature watched her. She watched it. She didn't waver. She held her gaze steady. Her hands remained at her sides, palms open, a presence, not a threat. The others remained at the valley's edge, unmoving, comprehension dawning. This wasn't her battle. It was her dialogue. The spiral narrowed as they approached. When only 3 meters separated them, they halted. Ray inhaled slowly. She saw something unexpected in the creature's eyes. Wisdom, a sense of age, not physical, but profound. It was not merely a predator. It was ancient, far older than the species assembled for this training, older than war. It had survived by adapting, not by destruction. She raised her hand, fingers extended. She did not roar, but whispered with motion. The creature lowered its head again, not in submission, but in understanding. She moved forward, placing her fingertips on its tusk. It didn't flinch. The surface was sleek, cold, vibrating with a low hum that resonated in her teeth. She closed her eyes, allowing her breath to harmonize with the creature's. In that stillness, something passed between them. Not words, not images, but an understanding. Then she stepped back. The creature turned, not fleeing, but retreating with purpose. Reaching the valley's edge, it glanced back once. Then it vanished into the trees. Groland spoke first. "It won't return, will it?" Ray shook her head. "No, it found what it sought." Drennick approached the center of the spiral, which was to see what we are. Miss exhaled softly. "And what did it decide?" "That we were something new," Ray replied. "Something not worth destroying." The group walked toward the ridge as sunset painted the sky. The air felt lighter. The forest had changed again. Still alive, still untamed, but no longer watching. Ray perched precariously on the cliff's edge, legs swinging above the mossy, rocky drop. Her mind wandered, reaching for the distant horizon. A profound understanding bloomed within her. She finally grasped the true nature of the test. It was everything. It wasn't merely about enduring the brutal elements, conquering monstrous foes, or staving off hunger. It was about the profound choice a cadet made when facing something far more powerful than themselves. Rye had stood against the alien onslaught, not because she lacked fear, but because she embraced it, made it a part of her very being. And now, the others had witnessed this. Groland now met her gaze directly. Drennick obeyed her orders without hesitation. Miss no longer lingered in the shadows. She sat close to Rye, their shoulders almost touching. As the final night of the trial cloaked the forest, there were no terrifying surprises, no lurking predators, no unsettling noises. Only a profound, acknowledging silence. When the extraction beacon finally pierced the dawn sky, no one surged forward. Rye lingered, the last to rise. She cast a lingering look at the valley behind them and whispered, almost to herself, "Sometimes, true strength isn't found in battle." She moved forward, the spiral forever imprinted in her memory, not just the one formed of stones, but the one she had carried within her since birth, a deep, internal force that had shaped her. The trial had ended, but for Rye, a new chapter had just begun. X.